To tell us more and analyze this, we're joined by Daniel Seaman, media analyst and former director of the Israeli government press office. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Lita.
So what do we know about this journalist? We know that she was working for Al Jazeera for many years now.
Yeah, I know her from time when I worked at the government press office, which is about a decade ago. She is a veteran journalist. She is a veteran correspondent with Al Jazeera. I think all journalists here, though the number of foreign journalists in the state covering events here in the Middle East or in Israel particularly, have been cut down significantly in past years, still those who are here, especially for such a long time, understand the dangers that exist in the coverage, especially in times of tension as we have at the moment. So it's very unfortunate that this happened there. But she, as I said, as a veteran, but you never know. And it's always dangerous, and you always have to be exceptionally careful. It's unfortunate what happened there with her.
Yeah, and we're seeing two versions of what was happening on the ground at the moment. Both IDF and the Palestinian Authority is trying to check what really happened there. But it only took the Palestinians minutes to blame Israel for the shootings.
Of course, the Palestinians have a record. The Palestinian Authority has a record of accusing and pointing fingers at Israel, as do many in the media, before things are clear. I know one thing, as a former combat soldier myself, especially Israel operating in an area of dense population, they're very careful, understanding that it is very dangerous and you have to know exactly what you're doing at every moment. Therefore, if none of the soldiers there fired, as they did in their initial report, they do not fire until they see an enemy that they have to address or a threat that they have to address. The Arabs, on the other hand, in that area, are very quick to pull the trigger, thinking that they see Israelis. Another thing is, the Israelis are dressed in combat uniform. The Arabs who are there are terrorists. They're trying to blend in with the civilian population in order to have the Israelis not realize who is a danger to them and who's not. As journalists are dressed up as Israelis would not be quick, meaning they're dressed up as the Israeli soldiers are, the Israelis would not be quick to pull a trigger against them. Therefore, from my understanding of this, there's more of a chance that this was done by those thugs and terrorists there who are firing from a civilian population, already a crime against humanity in itself, that they take coverage behind civilians. It's more likely that they're the ones who perpetrated this than the Israeli soldiers.
Do you think that the IDF spokesperson unit was a bit late in putting out the, the response of the IDF to the incident?
Of course, as usual, but there's always circumstances, because they're waiting to find out what actually happened before, and the report comes in. While this is happening in Jenin, the Palestinian Authority can immediately report on it. The Israelis have to get the report come back to them, to the IDF spokesman's unit. Therefore, there's always a delay with that, and they're always very careful to try to find out what happened before. The Arabs there are not held to the same standards as the IDF spokesman. Therefore, they can say whatever they want. It reported immediately. Al Jazeera did this, and they have a record of not always sticking to the truth. Also, I understand that the Palestinian Authority Health Ministry, they have a history of spreading not only lies, but blood libels against the Jewish people. In the past, they reported, there was one report by them that Israel had poisoned, ironically, had poisoned the wells there, something that was an anti-Semitic trope that was used against Jews in the past. And then there was this report for years that the foreign journalist reported and mimicked, constantly reported, was that Israel used the use of Israeli dime weapons, something that does not even exist in reality, but supposedly something that Israel used against the Arabs there. So I would not put a lot of trust in what they're saying. I'd wait till the full report comes out. But as it looks like at the moment, this was done by the Arabs themselves and had nothing to do with the Israeli soldiers there.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the propaganda war, and I have to ask you, is Israel, do we even have, a chance to winning in that propaganda war where you have all those pictures being spread out online, on social media, on television?
Well, this whole concept of false news or lies that are coming here, that are coming out of there, this was, I call Israel the cradle of fake news. because journalists here did not apply professional standards for many years. And Israel was, to a large degree, put its trust in the journalists that they would uphold professional standards, which they did not. About 20 years ago, when the Intifada broke out, we were quick to learn that the first thing that Israel was accused of was killing this boy called Mohammed al-Dura, which later on, when you found out, it was actually done by the Palestinians themselves who fired in the direction, and it was not clear whether the child had died or not.
But the damage was already done.
The damage is always done. The damage is always done. The only thing I can say right now is that Israel and the Middle East here is not at the focus of the international interest as it was in the past, and therefore this may last for 24 hours, but the Palestinian Authority are trying to milk this for all they can. We already know that her funeral was delayed till tomorrow, so that the Palestinians, it's not for them to be able to investigate it. It's so that the Palestinian Authority can attend it and milk this for all they can to paint Israel, because in the past month and a half, what we've been seeing is Palestinian terrorism against Israeli civilians, Palestinians murdering Israeli civilians, and they're trying to divert the attention away from their activity and from their encouragement of this activity on the part of their civilians. They're trying to move it away and draw attention to Israel, supposedly as if Israel has done something wrong in this case. So any professional journalist would be very careful and take their time before pointing the finger at Israel. Now, journalists die there is, unfortunately, in areas of conflict, you have at least over 20 people who've died, for example, in the conflict going on right now between the Ukraine and Russia. So it is known that this happens. It's unfortunate, and hopefully journalists will be very cautious before they point the finger at Israel in this case.
Yeah, and it's also concerning that the Palestinian Authority is not allowing Israel to check what happened there. It makes you wonder. Daniel Seaman, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at iltv.tv and watch from any device.